When I was a teenager, I worked at a local pizza joint named Peter's Pies. To my small Minnesota town, that place's pizza was important. I only worked there for the summer before I went off to college, but while I was there, I learned what exactly made Peter's Pies so important to the town. In its 40-some years of life, it saw competing pizza places come and go. Over the years, there were quite a lot of them that failed. There was at least one new one annually, and they usually didn't even last a year. Across the country, hardly any restaurant managed to last a year. The only other survivalist in the town's free market of pizza, besides Peter's Pies, was a national franchise. It made it to its 10th year just last year. One reason Peter's Pies did so well was because they have good pizza. Another reason was because the proprietor lived right upstairs. He got a good deal on the mortgage because of that, long, long ago. If he prioritized it, he could have paid off that mortgage in his first 3 good years of selling pizzas. Since then, mortgage principals quadrupled, while incomes failed to even double. The only reason the one other pizza place managed was because the owner's parents bought the building with cash, even paid the franchise fees. The parents bought the place as a coming-of-age gift for their child. A few years later, they did the same thing for their other child, too. Bought them a brand new taco place, which was also a national franchise. It is interesting to note that both of these franchises' marketing teams advertised the products they sold as affordable. It might be surprising that the local government has been greenlighting these pizza places over the years, knowing they'll be doomed to fail if the associated costs can't be outright paid, knowing they'll be competing against a well-established duopoly of pizza places. However, it wouldn't be a free market of pizzas if they didn't, now would it? At Peter's Pies, I worked with a recent college graduate as well as a teenager a few years younger than me. The graduate was lanky, painted in tattoos, and in spitting image of the Werner Goldberg Wehrmacht recruitment poster. Werner Goldberg appeared in print as the ideal German soldier leading up to the Second World War. The teenager was fit, with absolutely no tattoos to speak of, and looked like a perfectly normal person. She liked to wear comfortable leggings. The graduate told me he took the pizza job to help pay off some of his college debt. He lived at his parents' place to save on rent, too. He was also getting work experience at the nearby juvenile detention center. He said that he wanted to be a cop, said it made sense because the degree he just got from college was in criminology. The teenager told me she took the pizza job to help put some money in her bank account, so that she'd be better able to pay for college in a few years. The income she made working part-time at the pizza place would be roughly 1/3 of what the proprietor made when he first opened the restaurant 40-some years ago. The price she'd paid to go to college would be roughly 2 times more than what the proprietor's mortgage was. Unfortunately, the pizza job money wasn't going to help very much. One day, while working together closing up, the graduate showed off his tattoos. He pulled up his pant leg to reveal skeletons in military fatigues. He pointed out the largest one, whose combat helmet sat on the front of his knee, said there used to be an iron cross right in the middle of the helmet. He said it had worn away while he worked on his knees shingling roofs. While the teenager was vacuuming carpets, unable to hear much over the sound of the cleaning machine, the graduate told me a secret. He looked over at the teenager while drying a drinking glass, leaned over toward me so that he could whisper in my ear. He told me that years back, when he was a teenager in high school, he had slept with the teenager's mother. It seems this is one of the general quirks of growing up in a small town. It is not uncommon to hear that a contemporary was once underaged and coerced into sex by someone's mom. The graduate went on to tell me of another one of his relationships. He said he was backpacking in Europe during a break from college and that during this time he was seeing a French woman. He said the relationship was awful, joked that he just couldn't understand what she was saying. I'm sure to this day he still has trouble understanding those he makes relationships with. He told me also that the reason he was backpacking in Europe was so that he could visit his grandma. His grandma was German. He said she was crazy and that she used to be a Hitler Youth back in her day. She apparently had lots of Nazi memorabilia in her basement. Telling me about his backpacking trip apparently reminded him about the tattoo that he had on his forearm. With a glint of pride in his eye, he pointed out all the places where the tattoo had the colors of the German flag. The teenager said she was planning to do a semester abroad in Europe when she was in college. She didn't have any close family members in Europe, though. It was because of my close friend that I worked at Peter's Pies. He'd been working there for years, had become a reliable employee, and had formed a close relationship with the proprietor. Since the proprietor ended up thinking that I was also reliable, he staggered my shifts with those of my friend so that he could be sure someone reliable was working in the restaurant at all times. Because of this, I almost never got to work with my close friend. On occasion, the boss would have his reliable employees run errands for him. This meant that sometimes I'd have to go pick up sausage from the butcher or filone from the bakery. Sometimes he'd have us pick up things for him too. Cigarettes usually, Marlboro 100s in the gold box. There was a real community about the local pizza shop. There was a regular who lived just up the street. His children were raised on Peter's Pies pizza. There was an arcade room in one corner of Peter's Pies, and whenever those children were playing something back there, the proprietor always came out with ice cream for them. Peter's Pies was also open on Thanksgiving, New Year's, and Christmas. The proprietor wouldn't make any employees come in those days, but he'd still have them do some of the preparation beforehand for any turkeys and pies and pizzas that he would serve for anyone that came in. Not many people came in those days, even though he made everything free of charge. He did it as a service to the community for anyone who didn't have family to celebrate the holiday with. The proprietor himself didn't have any family to celebrate the holiday with. He had 2 daughters that he raised with his wife, but he and his wife had been long divorced. One of his daughters ran a very successful law firm and could have taken the time to see him, but she usually made her life on the West Coast very busy. The other daughter, whom he loved very much, died by suicide. Though Peter's Pies was open for every holiday, there was one year that it wasn't open for Thanksgiving. Even though everything had been prepared for it, and nothing in particular was more out of place than any other year, its doors were closed. On the Wednesday before that particular Thanksgiving, the proprietor wanted to make one additional preparation. But, well, things didn't work out. It should be established before proceeding that the proprietor lived a hard life. Even though he was financially secure because of the great mortgage he got some 40 years ago, he lived a hard life. Even though he had a firm place in the small town's duopoly of pizza, he lived a hard life. Even though he could at any moment use his pizza place owner earnings to take a pleasant vacation across Europe without having to worry about the cost of living accommodations, he lived a hard life. Even though he was able to pay for college with the money he made from a summer part-time job, unlike his present-day employees, he lived a hard life. The proprietor lived a hard life. Before he was long divorced from his wife, he'd had an awful problem with alcohol. Before he had an awful problem with alcohol, he'd lost one of the most important things in his life to suicide. There was only one other time that Peter's Pies closed its door. The proprietor had reckoned with his choice of profession during a real depressed period of his life. He was drinking a lot. He ended up selling off Peter's Pies to someone else. That someone else coincidentally had the name Peter. Peter owned the place for just a few years before the original proprietor gave up drinking and decided to get his old life back, even though Peter remodeled the place. Proceeding on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the proprietor wanting to make one additional preparation, he asked my close friend if he could be driven somewhere. The proprietor was acting real secretive about the destination. However, when they finally arrived, it was hard to obscure. The proprietor had made his reliable employee drive him to the liquor store. The liquor store was an employee-owned company with over 120 locations across the state. My close friend didn't have much to say. He was hoodwinked. Had he been asked outright to drive someone with an awful problem with alcohol to the liquor store, he would not have, even if that person were his own boss. My close friend told me that he tried to protest what the proprietor was doing. In the car, he asked if everything was okay, but before the conversation went too far, the proprietor opened the door to get out. The proprietor said that he didn't need a ride home as he quickly left the car for the store. The next day, Peter's Pies was not open for Thanksgiving. The proprietor did not let anyone know why. The day after that, he called his employees to tell them not to come in for the rest of the week. He never told anyone what his one additional preparation was. For my hometown, it was a tragedy, but it was inevitable that Peter's Pies would open their doors again. The proprietor put the whole thing behind him, picked himself up by his bootstraps, and came back to show his usual smile to the regulars who didn't even realize anything was the matter. That's what makes Peter's Pies so important to the town.